So as of late on this channel, we've been reviewing a lot of really dark content. Last week I talked about a baby being eaten. A few weeks before then, I talked about a baby being sacrificed. Recently, I also talked about a twin brother, you know, having his way with his niece. So there's been some really dark content on this channel. So I needed to take a break from this. So I watched one of the most wholesome and lovely movies that I think I can remember in a very long time. Sudani from Nigeria. So a big shout out to a few people who recommended me to watch this movie after they realized I've been watching a lot of dark movies. Big shout outs to you, Vivek, Maddie, and Johannes Vargsi, and a few others who are on the screen right now. So this movie, Sudani from Nigeria, man, what a treat this movie was. What a beautiful movie. A comedy drama family from 2018. Didn't really know what to expect coming in, to be honest. Like, the trailer is really brief. There's not much content about it, but I'd heard actually a lot about this movie, but didn't know much about it. The title itself is very interesting, so that is pretty, that's a good reason for me to watch a movie, because the title is just Sudani from Nigeria. I was like, it's a Malayalam movie. I don't really understand the connection, but look, I am so glad I watched this movie. I'm going to talk about this movie mostly from the impact it had on me. Like, I will touch on sort of the movie itself and, some of the more technical and plot discussion things that we normally do in these kind of reviews. But man, this movie had such a deep and profound impact on me. It's just to start with, what I really loved about this movie was that it really bucks the trend of your stereotypical sports drama movie. Like, I was a little bit afraid coming into this movie because I've seen so many sports movies and they always seem to have the same kind of tropes, the same stereotypes. The underdog team, or the underdog player, or the players facing adversity, or something like this, through strength and perseverance, they get through and they become the most successful players ever. Some generic storyline like that I've seen about 100 times. So I didn't know if this was going to be a similar story to that, but my goodness, this movie honestly just uses football or soccer as a way to get you into the movie, but it really isn't much. It's not really about soccer that much or football that much. It's almost used more as a plot device. Like, this movie is so much greater and so much bigger than what all those movies do. And this movie is about life. This movie is about people. It's about community. It's just about kindness. This movie is about kindness. It's such a nice movie to watch in today's age, and I definitely needed to watch this movie after all the movies that I have watched recently. But yeah, I absolutely love how this does not go through any of the generic stuff that I've talked about before. It's just, as I said, I'll just touch on more about sort of what impacted me most about this movie was just, the sense of community and what they sort of do, sort of help out, Samuel, this player. It's beautiful. And to sort of see the hardship that he's gone through, it's really touching to see, the kindness from people and what people will do to help people out, in really bad situations. People from completely different parts of the world, people from completely different cultures of the world. And they don't use, the general trope of like, soccer is a bridge and everyone can understand through this beautiful game. No, it's through human aspects. Samuel has gone through a very dark past. He's a refugee, which they do a great job of highlighting the plight of, what refugees have to go through and the lives that they live. I don't remember if I've seen too many movies that have talked about this topic, not at least at the top, off the top of my head. So it really gives us good details into sort of what they have to go through and how difficult life is for them, despite even when they've achieved or when they've done things which are great. When they have opportunities, they get the door slammed in their face because they just are refugees. They don't have, valid passports. They don't have money for passports. They live in very terrible conditions. It's a really sorry situation. This movie does a great job of just bringing that out, and that aspect makes you really, they do it towards the end, but you really empathize for Samuel's character during that stage. The other things I really loved about this movie was, being an Indian who is a foreigner. This movie is obviously very close and has a lot of relatability for me in some ways. I've been to India many times and I've been in situations where I've had close relationships with people who I can't even understand what they say to me. And they can't understand what I'm saying. I've gone to parts of South India, I've lived in parts of South India, and it's been a common thing for me to make friends and have friends with people that you just cannot communicate with. But it doesn't mean anything less. I've been to other parts of the world where it's been a similar situation. You just bond. Just put two people in one place together and you just start to get the bond. And the relationship between Samuel and Majid's mom, oh my God, it's so beautiful and touching to see that. Like, she confides in him a lot of the times. And, she's going through heartache and trauma and stuff that she's gone through and not being able to connect with her son, Majid, the stepfather who's there, who Majid does not accept. It's just she's able to express all this to a stranger, and there's just a certain amount of beauty in that, which I really appreciated. You know, I've been there in those kind of situations. Obviously, I'm not a 6'7" football player from Nigeria or Sudan, um, but basically, there are scenarios where I've been through with that, so it touched me on a personal level so much like that. But just, I mean, you can't really say too much more about this movie than how kind the people are around this player. Once they really understand, what he's going through, and the moment when they get to know that he's a refugee, you just see the whole community come together and trying to help him out. All the manager, his friends, everybody comes together to try and help this person out, no matter what. There is some conflict, there is some drama in between the scenes, which I think adds a lot of layers to this movie, which I want to touch on as well. But essentially, the way that everyone gets behind him and how touching it is to see, how close they are to him when his grandmother dies, how supportive they are of him, and how they want what's best for him. This movie is impossible not to just get overly emotional with, because it does it so well. I honestly don't think there's anything cheesy or corny about this movie, because it's so real and relatable. We've all had loss in our lives. Most of us have had some form of loss in our lives. We've had moments where it's been very tough, and we've had kindness from strangers who we just remember. Small moments that mean so much to us at that time. The sense of community is also very nostalgic for me. I used to travel back to India very often, and the scene when Samuel is traveling away from, this family, this community that's helped him out so much, and how close they are to him. He starts off as a celebrity, as honestly sometimes foreigners do, like myself when we go to countries. You start out as this celebrity or someone that's sort of coming from somewhere else. You're talked about differently. But then later on, you really start to get closeness to people, again, without language, without anything, just through small things you do, small interactions that you have, interactions he has with, Majid a lot of the time, the manager, different people that come sort of seeing to see him, the old yoga, a man who's very flexible. These are all little quirks that are very localized in sort of small communities. And obviously the relationship between the mother and Samuel, and the mother's friend and Samuel. It's just so nostalgic for me. And as they're sort of leaving and you see the car going away in the van and they're turning around and they're seeing him, just tears, man. It's I'm not gonna lie, this movie was so emotional just for that aspect. It's beautiful. This movie was so beautiful. I am so touched and so amazed. Even talking about it now makes me feel a bit emotional, just remembering back to some of the scenes. But I will talk a little bit about this movie, just from a general movie point of view, the plot, the storyline, the characters, the acting, the production value. You know, really, it's flawless from that aspect as well. You can argue that, the plot is sometimes a little bit slow, especially at the start, but I think it's slow because it just packs on so many layers. The stuff I talked about is stuff that I think is very close to me, but there are certain aspects of this movie which can definitely be looked at from a different lens. We see the journey that Majid has and the struggles that he's going through, and he's such a three-dimensional character. There's so much to this character and what he's going through, right? He's a football crazy manager in Kerala. Not good prospects for the women he doesn't have much of luck with getting a bride or anything like that. He obviously has a very hard relationship with his mother. He has a hard relationship with his stepfather. Um, so he's going through a lot. He's also in this whole situation where he's trying to help out Samuel. Um, and Samuel being poached by another coach and things like that. Like, there's very little that he has going for him. So when we see that moment when the coach tries to poach his best player when he's sick, it breaks his world. So there's a lot to sort of like about that whole character journey and that character arc. All the cameo support characters are so great. The actress that plays the mother and the mother's friend, both the elderly women, are so good. I saw my old friend Lukman from Tadumala, so pretty happy to see him in a very sort of small role. But the rickshaw driver, everybody was just, they all built, all these people build a community, and that's what this movie is about. This movie is about community and how beautiful community can be. So yeah, it was really well done. Even though it's not about football, the movie's only about football for about half an hour, because after that we don't see it again, except for really small snippets here and there, and we just see the kids playing football every now and then. But it's not really about football all that much. But yeah, despite that, the football scenes in this movie are shot really well. Like, they actually look really good, and they really it's cool to get a glimpse into how sort of crazy the Kerala fan base is for football. It seems like it's a huge sport there, so that's really cool. Personally, I'm not a huge football fan, but I can definitely appreciate the community getting behind the sport and how much it sort of pulls people together. Yeah, so there's a lot to sort of like. I really like the production value. Soubin Shahir, this guy is just, honestly, I'm more impressed every time I see this guy now. This is the third movie of his that I'm seeing, and they've all been completely different. But this might have been my favorite performance of his, because he's not just a comedian; he's actually really funny in this. I find there's some hilarious lines he has which are so authentic, because that's exactly how someone that doesn't speak English fluently, which I'm sure Soubin does speak English proficiently, but he speaks in this movie like you would someone with very limited, exposure to the language. I think he says something at the start about when they ask him about where's he going, and he's going to see a girl, and the African players sort of say, is it your girlfriend? He says no, it's it says just a friend before after marriage to see the friend or enemy. Just, this movie is funny. This movie is actually really funny. I found it to be hilarious. All the interactions that they have in between and during the time, it's beautiful. It's really, really well done. It's lighthearted, but it's funny at the same time. But when it gets to its, the true, I guess, the reason why the movie works so well, the emotional aspect, he is so great in those scenes. Again, he's pretty contained. He seems to play a pretty contained character a lot of the time. Like, he's got this deep resentment towards his stepfather, even his mother. He's not really outspoken all that much until he's in really bad situations. But he does want the best for Samuel, and sometimes his mother's required to help him remember that. And I find that just beautiful. This movie is really about, kinship and the people you have around you. I keep repeating it, but that's just because every scene I talk about just comes back to that same point. But I can't speak too much more about this movie until I really talk about that climax scene. Oh my god. Yeah, that climax scene is one that is going to stay with me. I'll say there's two moments in this movie that really stick with me. And before I talk about the climax, it is the scene that I mentioned before about him leaving, and how authentic and close to home that whole setup was. To the fact that he's sitting down and eating a big meal, that is so common in Indian families. When you're leaving, you prepare something really nice for your last meal. Normally, it's a big feast, which is very common. Small little gifts that you get that don't even really mean all that much, but it's a way to just remember people through objects. I find it really nice, really touching, with the mother giving the earrings to his sister. Just absolutely stunning, beautiful. The watch gift at the end, which is kind of funny, but very realistic. You know, get some kind of random gift given to you. Um, just all these things that were really nice. So that scene really hit me hard, and just the rear view mirror as they're just driving away, man. But the tears were starting to flow then, but that was just a warm up for what I was gonna see later on, which was the final scene. Oh my god. Hard to speak about the scene without getting emotional, man. When they exchange the jerseys at the very end, that might be the best airport scene that I've seen. So many stupid airport scenes in rom com movies that we see, which are honestly so corny and cheesy. This movie, you just get so pulled away with seeing how beautiful that scene was and how much Samuel has meant to Majid. You know, we often, we see that we see how much of an impact, the community and everyone has had around Samuel, but he's also had a huge impact on the people around him. Why? It's just the way it is. That's the way things happen. When you're around somebody for so long, you get to know them, you appreciate them. You support each other because you're good people. That's what this movie demonstrates. It demonstrates the beauty of life and the beauty in people. But that scene, it's I have to talk about that scene without getting really emotional because it's so beautiful. Just the exchange of jerseys, which might be, one of the most beautiful things in sport, I think. That whole, jersey exchange. Like soccer, I think, started that whole trend. If it's not, please correct me in the comments. But, I know it got adopted by sports like basketball. It got adopted by sports like cricket even. But yeah, it's just so touching the way they do it. And the performances again by Soubin, the face he has, when he's leaving and how emotionally he's on the drive back. How everyone is so subdued because they've lost this friend, but they know that he has to go back and support his family. It's so well done. Like it's such a beautiful scene, and it's one that's going to stay with me for a long time, I think. I know I say that a lot about Malayalam movies, but this movie in particular, I think, is really going to stick with me. I really enjoy this movie, man. It's such a beautiful movie, and I'm so glad that I got to watch this one. At this time, after I've watched a lot of dark movies, it just makes a lot of sense to sort of jump on and watch this now. But yeah, I think that's basically going to take me to the end of my review here. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy what I've had to say about this. If you've come this far, please make sure to hit that subscribe button because seriously, I'm loving watching these movies, and that subscribe button, if you guys hit that, it means so much to me. But I will now move on to sort of my D scale and sort of what I give this as my final rating. Look, I want to give this one a full dope. This is a dope. This is perfect for me. This is such a great movie, and I know that there might be some technical flaws, and you could make some arguments about this movie from a narration point of view. But the way that this movie hits you emotionally it hit me so hard and so deep. I'm not someone that really gets brought to tears all that easily, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie, this movie brought me to tears. Like, it hit me so badly. It's one of the most beautiful movies that I've seen. But that'll do it for me. Again, thank you for listening. I really enjoyed watching this movie, so thank you for this suggestion. Please keep leaving me all the recommendations that you want me to sort of check out, because I'm going to start making a list and start ticking them off now, because I've been getting so many, and I'm only going to start doing movies that are recommended at this point. Well, mostly, except for ones that come out, on new release and stuff like that. But otherwise, it'll just be basically movies that you guys are suggesting to me. But thanks again, and I will catch you on the next one.